Alright, hi guys. So first off, I just want to apologize for the dim lighting. It is a nice, wonderful, rainy day in Stillwater, so that's kind of screwing up the lighting effects here in my office. But I want to thank you for, what I think is a great course. You guys have been a fantastic group of students. I've loved reading your essays. I've loved reading your book and movie reviews. It's really great to see everybody just kind of, I love seeing when students get it. And you guys have done fantastically. I really hope you've enjoyed the course. This is one of my personal favorites, especially because, this was the first upper division course that I ever got to teach back as a night class in OSU Tulsa years ago. So this particular course has some special meaning for me. So again, I hope you've liked it. By now, you should have gotten in your emails things for the student surveys of instruction. So please, by all means, fill that out. Let me know how I'm doing. As always, if you didn't like me, my name is Dr. Smith, so I cannot stress that enough. But seriously, I'd like to know what you liked. I'd like to know what you didn't like, how I can improve, as well as, if you like the course. I mean, it's reading that feedback. That's what makes the job worth doing, I think. So what I'd like to do now, here, just kind of wrap up the course, is finish talking about the Bush years. And I really want to, the theme for today is really going to be this kind of changing attitudes within the American federal government, as well as political divisiveness in the fact that we no longer trust the government. I mean, we talked about with Vietnam the credibility gap. Okay, we know the government's lying to us, so we're only going to trust it as far as we can throw it. But it's only gotten worse. And I mean, we can see that with the election of 2016 and this wonderful mess we're in today. I never thought I would ever see a case of a White House communications director fired after only 10 days. I mean, from what I understood from NPR this morning, he never actually got on the payroll, never even actually assumed his actual duties. But, he gave, that wonderful late night interview, which, if you've not read it, an American politician went on record as saying, well, at least I'm not Steve Bannon trying to suck my own, and I'll let you fill in the word there. Talk about a mental image you can never unsee. There's no amount of bleach for that in the brain. But the fact is, that's the kind of turbulence we're facing in, realistically, an uncertain political climate. And I don't care where on the political spectrum you fall. If you're a Trumper, fantastic. If you're, Hillary should have got it, fantastic. If you're Bernie Sanders, should have got it, fantastic. Get involved in politics because this is directly going to affect you. And one of the ways we can see that growing distrust in the government will come from Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. And with Hurricane Katrina, I mean, this is probably the third most intense hurricane that hit the United States in recorded history. And this storm caused more damage than any other storm in American history, to the tune of about $108 billion in damages. About 1,200 people died. And what we're going to see is New Orleans, the levees fail, and I know, grammar problems, grammar Nazi, which again, I probably told this joke before, but just remember, the guy that proofread Hitler's speeches is himself a grammar Nazi. But the levees failed. I mean, it was poorly designed, it gave way, and 90% of New Orleans would be flooded. And if you look, I mean, this is a massive freaking hurricane. I mean, it's absolutely huge. And the federal government was somewhat powerless to stop it. I mean, 90% of the city was underwater. And so people expected that the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, would come in and begin dealing with the problems. I mean, that's kind of, well, duh, that's what it's for. But the fact is, it was a very slow delay. And so what we're going to see is, because people were stranded without help, people are stranded as their city is flooded, and the government was slow to react. Not only did this serve to begin discrediting the Bush administration, which already at this point was seeing Bush was seeing his approval ratings. Somehow he had managed to get reelected in 2004, and it just begins to tank. Okay, it's in part because of this, the Iraq War, other stuff. What we're going to see is that there's got to be some sort of reform, that the way the American government was conducting business simply wasn't working. And so this is kind of the final hammer blow, if you will, of just all of this distrust in the government that needs something of radical change. That there's got to be something the government can do to make things better. Enter then, in 2008, Senator Barack Obama, who was elected senator in 2006 and very quickly developed a following that people loved him. He was very charismatic. I'm speaking of him as if he were dead, but he's charismatic. He could motivate an audience, and he promised something that Americans hadn't seen since the 1940s, and that would be change. You know, again, it's beyond the scope of our class, but spoiler alert, I'm teaching U.S. 1919 to 45, so we'll cover this. Spoiler alert if any of you need a class in Tulsa in the fall. But what happens is he promises change we can believe in. Just like FDR, who had said, look, we're going to do things that haven't been done before because the American people need a new deal. And that resonated with people. That resonated with people who were tired of just the way the government had done business, who were tired of the way that things were going, who wanted some sort of change. And so I don't want to get too political. I mean, again, I don't want to feel like I don't want to alienate anybody by, the one thing I hated of those profs that say, well, you have to think like I do, parrot my ideas. I'm a historian. That's not what I'm about. If you want that, go see a poli-sci class. I'm going to tell the facts as best I can see them. Okay? I mean, literally, I will tell you where I stand if you want. I don't like the individual mandate of Obamacare. I personally don't. I don't think the government should, legislate whether or not you have to buy health insurance. But at the same time, I think that we do need health care reform. I consider myself a conservative, but I cannot stand Donald Trump. I am a moderate. I literally don't fit in anywhere. And so I think that actually does me some good because it allows me to be somewhat objective. And in 2008, what basically we see is it's John McCain, who was recently diagnosed with brain cancer, and Sarah Palin for the Republicans versus Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And the issue is McCain, who's been this long-standing element of American politics, he kind of represented to many the status quo. He tried to brand himself as a maverick, saying he was going to break ranks with the Republican Party. And in fact, we've seen that. I mean, what was it, just a week ago from when I'm recording this lecture, when the Republicans were trying to repeal Obamacare. He voted no. He broke ranks with his party, with his president. So there's some truth to that maverickness, but Barack Obama had the better message. He also had the bigger war chest. He had the most money. And so what we're going to see is Democrats in 2008 are going to win the House, the Senate, and the White House. Americans were tired of how things had been. But possibly more importantly, in the context of this class, because frankly, my personal belief about politics, we're going to go to the right some, we're going to go to the left some, but we're going to advance. I mean, you don't like Barack Obama, great, the country will survive. If you don't like Trump, great, the country will survive. I personally believe that the country is stronger than any one person or any one political party. But what's so important, I think, about 2008, and unfortunately, there are a lot of people who can't get over this. My own grandmother, ardent Democrat to the core. The woman will argue with me politics on everything. Could not bring herself to vote for Barack Obama for the singular reason that he was black. And it's that unfortunately says a lot about where we are as a society even today. But let's do a little bit of just looking back to the past. When we started this course, 1945, the United States military was segregated. Black people largely could not vote in the South. I mean, we've got all sorts of poll taxes, literacy tests, outright discrimination, the KKK. And by the time we end this course, 73 years later, okay, and I guess that's 63 years later. I'm a historian, I can't do math. 63 years later, we have the first African-American president. Was he divisive? Yeah, in spots. Was he this terrorist Arab trying to bring stuff down from within? Of course not. And I mention that because, watch some of the debates. And I'll if I can find it, I'll post a video of it. of McCain doing a town hall in 2008. And you've got this woman saying, well, no, I don't trust him. He's an Arab. No, he's not. McCain even said, look, the guy is a good guy. Come on. And so there's that fear of change, that same change, that rejection of the status quo people enjoy. But at the same instance, okay, there are still some people, and this was the theme of 2016, take our country back. That people don't like change, at least not all people. Change is something that will happen. Okay? The only constant in the universe is change. But human beings, we have to be drug in, kicking and screaming, because we like things how they are. One of the biggest issues that bedeviled Barack Obama and George W. Bush will be the Great Recession, which we don't like saying things are depressions. We've learned from the 1920s. We have this bad idea of the Great Depression. Hey, the sun's starting to come out. So we don't want to call it depression. That's too horrible joke. Depressions are too depressing. So we'll call it a recession. It doesn't sound so bad. But it's actually pretty horrible. People are going to lose their jobs right and left. This comic would have resonated, in fact, with probably some of you. You know, the child, the teenager, the 20-something. Can I move back in with you until I find a job? But the 50-year-old, I just asked your grandparents the same thing, because this is going to affect all strata of American society. In fact, that might be why more than a few of you are taking this class, because the job market had turned so sour that go back to college, get the education, see if that would improve your chances. And that's the kind of world that we live in. The economy, very slow to grow. And, it officially lasts December 2007 to June 2009, but you could argue that even now we might still be feeling the aftershocks of it. And what we're going to see is basically this. The economy just simply cannot keep pace. A housing bubble will burst. There's a high national debt. We've got the rise of this trading, and I wish that I could show this online. If you've ever have a chance, do yourself a favor, watch Inside Job. It's narrated by Matt Damon, and it talks a lot about this financial crisis. One of the things it mentions was the issue of subprime loans, of pretty much people making loans that they knew that people couldn't, pay back. Okay, it's like the idea of, okay, when I got the loan for my car, well, what's your income? Okay, well, here's how much the car is. Here's your income. Is this something you can actually do? But for homes and things like that, businesses were making loans that they knew people couldn't pay back. Then there were other businesses who made money speculating on whether those loans would fail, and others who made money buying up those loans and things like that. And all of that just collapsed. That's in part why we have this financial crisis. And so what we see is we're living in the world that created. We're living in the world where there are fewer higher paying jobs. Living in the world where people with college degrees are having problem finding jobs. I mean, it used to be, this whole idea you've got to go to college, but now that's no guarantor of actually landing a job. We're seeing resurgence in people saying, no, go to a trade school. We're seeing things that I'm dealing with. I love my job, but I'm thankful to have it, because I know many friends who got their master's degrees or their PhDs, and they cannot find employment because the job market is highly competitive and it's drying up. And we're going to see unemployment will top 10%, which, while that's not Great Depression bad, the highest you really want unemployment is maybe 5 to 6%. You want part of your workforce mobile, but you don't want that many people unemployed. Too many unemployed, and obviously that's how you can tell the economy is doing really, really, really bad. So take people that are living this, that aren't, that might not find work, they might not find jobs. I mean, this is also one of the reasons why we see those, fight for 15, the idea, okay, well, people are finding work, like McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or in the service industry. They're working 40, 50 hours a week, but minimum wage, you can't get by. And this is in part why, because, higher paying jobs are tough to get. And so that's when the government steps in and says, okay, what can we do to help? And again, this is kind of a shift that we've seen since 1902 with Theodore Roosevelt and the Square Deal. that government means that people actually have to care about you. And so what we're going to see is the government will be expanding and in different ways, some of it good, some of it bad. We're going to see that the government will see an increase in spying, both against foreign governments and domestic. Okay, things like, 2010, the release of the diplomatic cables by WikiLeaks, where quite literally, we're listening in on Angela Merkel's phone calls from Germany. We're keeping tabs on our allies. Or there's Edward Snowden, who in 2013 released information on domestic American spying and the fact that, the government was collecting information about private citizens. And now we're taking steps to do what we can to combat that, to tell the government, no, that's bad. But those were things that heretofore the government you would think would not do. And part of it is because of just this lack of privacy. I stupidly left my phone in the other room. But think about it. In the old days, it would be hard to collect a lot of information about you, but we put so much of it on Facebook. And we can blame, this right here, the laptop computer. We can blame, computing. And the reason is simple. Okay, I love social media. I hope if, some of you guys like the course, want to keep in touch after, please add me to Facebook. I love keeping in touch with former students and, seeing how you're doing. I love doing whatever I can to help. If you need letters of recommendation for a scholarship, that's a great way to stay in contact. But by the same token, online for anybody to see, friend, foe, whoever, we're putting our job, we're putting our day-to-day routine, our hobbies, our interests, our political views, everything, we are willingly giving it. It is much easier to spy on somebody now than it was 50 years ago. Gone are the days of, something that sticks with me from an old Simpsons cartoon was the van sitting outside the place. Flowers by Irene, FBI. Gone are the days of the van outside. Now, just hop up on Facebook, search, and boom, we can find whatever you'd like to know. I'm just thinking, oh God, I think it was the Aurora shooter. I was teaching a class, U.S. since 1865 when that happened. And I remember when the story broke, what was happening is news reporters were just going on to Facebook, searching the guy's name and finding it. And very quickly, they're like, oh, well, he listens to death metal music and this type of music. And then people were trying to say, oh, well, that's why he did it. Or other people say, oh, well, we know in the Tea Party movement, there's a guy with the same name, so he's a Tea Partier. It's politically motivated. And the other part of that is obviously wrong conclusions. But what I'm getting at is it's much easier for the government to invade your privacy when you yourself are willing to do that. We're going to see that terrorism is a constant thing even to this day. Maybe not domestic terrorism, but foreign terrorism is on the rise. And we're going to see that, government assistance has skyrocketed in part because even though the Great Recession officially ended 8 years ago, people are still suffering from it. Literally, this is something that's going to take time to recover from. But also, something that is entirely controversial, the Affordable Care Act, which we're seeing, is probably here to stay because the Republicans won't repeal it, is... Why I mention this is not so much to rag on it or anything like that, but now we're directly concerned with citizen welfare. Okay, this isn't like Social Security where, okay, when you're too old to work, then we'll care. Now we're literally saying from the beginning, we have a direct responsibility to ensure that you get some health care. We have a direct responsibility to ensure that medical care is at least semi-affordable. And what we're seeing is the government is expanding. It's taking a more direct interest in our lives. And in some cases, that's good. And in some cases, it's not. I'll leave you to decide which. That's entirely subjective. But the flip side of this is how divisive it can be. Because there are those that, again, believe that Obama is a hardcore communist, which he is not. There are those that literally, apparently, the Tea Partiers here, who can't decide whether to be Captain America or Paul Revere, who, want to go back to this more 1700s, very limited government capability. but at the same time, they want to juggle things and it doesn't make sense. Okay? And that's one of the issues with the Tea Party, which Tea Party taxed enough already. This was a more libertarian split with the GOP, the Republicans, that began around 2007. We see rallies in 2009, and in 2010, they're now politically active. And we can see that, they're still active to this day, and it's, this kind of thing that brings somebody like Donald Trump into the White House. They originally, they don't like high taxes. They don't like deficit spending. They want a balanced budget. But at the same time, these are the people that will say, let's cut down welfare programs, let's cut Social Security, but things like military spending, that they're going to be fine with. Let's keep spending $35 million per unit of the F-35 or whatever. Which I hate the F-35. It is a stupid waste of time. Not to mention, I remember being in high school back in the 90s and was told the thing was coming out right around the corner. But it's this they're conservative, they're libertarian. It's kind of, they're not liberal. That's one thing we can say. But their policies don't always make sense. It's like they sound good in theory, but they never want to take it all the way across the board. And so what we see is by 2012, the Republican Party fractures. It literally is divided into more a conservative wing and then a more radical wing. And we can see that today. We can see that over economics. We can see it over immigration. Do we limit immigration? Do we not? What do we do about the Syrian refugee crisis? And we can see it over Obamacare with some people saying, we see that in debates to repeal, where some Republicans are like, guys, we cannot just repeal this. Okay, we've got to do something for the constituents. Others are saying, well, we're going to repeal and replace, and others just repeal the damn thing. And what we're seeing is, if today is any indication, the Republicans are not necessarily a functioning party. And part of that has become, if you look at the history of the Republicans, it's because historically they are a single-issue party. In the 1860s, obviously it's slavery, and then it's going to be Reconstruction, then it's big business, and then it's expansion, and then it's anti-communism. And once the Cold War ends, once communism is not this monolithic evil, we see the Republicans don't really have something to energize their base. And so now it's kind of become a coalition party, which is why you might hear the term RINO, R-I-N-O, Republican in name only. Because today it's very hard to say what a Republican is. A Republican could encompass somebody like Donald Trump, who, again, will say things like, Mexico is sending rapists, very far right of the spectrum. Republican could be somebody like Steve Bannon, who is so alt-right that, you're going to get literally... With the alt-rightists, there's something that I actually just showed in my World War I course just last night. And I forget where, but it was this alt-right policy meeting where after Trump had been elected, people saying, hail Trump, hail our people, hail victory. It's very Nazi-like stuff. And to further escalate the Nazi stuff, in that meeting, they were talking about the concept of the lying press. And they're like, well, hey, let's just use the original German term. That's alarm bells. Republicans could include that. Republicans could include guys like John McCain, who are much more moderate. They could include people like Lisa Murkowski, who, from the very beginning of this healthcare debate since Trump took office, was like, no, we're not going to repeal this because my constituents need it. And so what this is going to pave the way for is radical extremism that, frankly, when I gave this lecture a year ago, I made Donald Trump the butt of so many jokes. I literally thought he was just going to be this overnight fad that hilarious for the SNL skits. I was wrong. Okay, that's what we're leading. We're leading now to such divisiveness that if you don't like something, you know what, just shut down the government. Literally, this is the kind of logic we're getting into in this now divided American political mindset of... I'm going to pull some numbers out just because, frankly, I can barely add 2 plus 2. But let's assume that on a week period, it would cost the government $250 million. Tea partiers in Congress and out were like, well, we've got to balance the budget. We've got to do this. So because we're not getting a budget we like, that lower spending, we're going to shut down the government. The problem is it costs money to do these kind of budgets. It costs money to shut down the government. And so literally, because they don't want to spend $250 million, they're going to spend $350 million. It doesn't make any sense. But literally, government shutdowns have become an accepted political tool, where people are fine bringing the United States government to a screeching halt. And if you think this is fine, all I'm going to say, put yourself in the mindset of Vladimir Putin, or Angela Merkel, or Macron of France. What the hell does the United States look like? What the hell does it look like when you literally have people like this guy right here who is more than a little excited to see his government crumble? Okay, this used to be a bad thing. This used to be, in the 70s, the couple of times it happened, a sign of major political dysfunction. Now we have normalized it. That is a problem. And we squabble about so much. Okay, things like DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which will be signed by Bill Clinton in the 90s, 1993, I believe, 1996, following 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which literally was like, okay, we will allow homosexual people in the military, but, you don't ask if they're homosexual, you don't tell if you're homosexual, just keep it under the radar. The military was fine with it. 2011, that's been overturned. But now we're seeing a further step because just last week, Donald Trump, in a Twitter thing, not even official policy, said that he was going to ban transgendered people from serving the U.S. military. And literally, again, just talk about how dysfunctional the American government has become. The story is that when the top generals, I guess, at the Joint Chiefs read his Donald Trump's Twitter thing, where he says, in consultation with my generals, blah, 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 you only get 140 characters. They thought he was announcing via Twitter going to war with North Korea, which I don't know what scares me more. The fact that we are considering that, or the fact that there's a thought the U.S. president would announce something like that on Twitter. When the days are gone of FDR, I asked the Congress to declare a state of war between the United States and the Empire of Japan. Now we're just beep, 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 on a phone. Okay? But why I'm getting back to this is what we're seeing today is a rejection of 20 years ago. We're seeing a rejection of the 90s. Okay, the Defense of Marriage Act, 1996. And this was literally, we're going to define marriage. We're going to ensure that if you refuse gay marriage, that doesn't violate civil rights. We're going to literally say marriage is one man, one woman. We're going to pave the way for civil unions to be between homosexual spouses. But in 2013, that's overturned by United States v. Windsor. And the logic is, very true. It's the same thing as Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal. If two people who love each other, if you have four people in, two couples that love each other, if one couple can have a marriage, one couple can have a civil union, and they're both supposed to be the same thing, you're literally saying, well, they're equal, they just have to be separate. And you can't do that. So one thing we're seeing is, despite the fact it's weird, we're moving further to the right. I mean, anti-immigration stuff is on the rise. We hate refugees, apparently. Never mind the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, poor, yearning to be free. Now we're gone back to 1979. Get the hell out of my country. But at the same time, on some things, we are liberalizing. America makes no sense. We're not moving necessarily fully to the right. We're drifting. We're just like this. We're like, well, we're going to move to the right, but we're going to drift and have something to the left while we're at it. And the best way to see that is with civil rights for all. That this is a nation of laws where all people are, in fact, created equal. And this was, I think, one of the coolest things we've ever done, and it saddens me that there are people today who are still grumpy about this. In 2003, individual states began recognizing same-sex marriages. And what we're going to see is in 2010, a federal court overturned a ban in California where California literally said that you cannot get a gay marriage. And so what we see is people again begin to sue. And President Obama in 2012, his position, as he said, evolved. And he said, okay, I'm going to now support gay marriage. And in 2015, on June the 26th, ironically enough, my 5th wedding anniversary, in Obergefell v. Hodges, the U.S. government ruled that gay marriage is, in fact, protected by the Constitution. Now, I remember tons of people, well, the Supreme Court can't create laws. How is this legal? Simple. If anybody wants to go and get a marriage, okay, well, you can't, I mean, it's recognition of state laws, it's equal protection under the laws. If so-and-so can marry so-and-so, then you can also marry whoever. I mean, that's what it basically is. So, you cannot say that, basically it says you cannot say that a man cannot marry a man. And if you cannot say that they can't marry, then, strictest legal definition, they in fact can. And we see this just explode all across the United States. And there are people, to this very day, it has been 2 years, and this is still going on. Okay, we see people still, making this a religious issue, making it a civil rights issue. We're talking about wedding cakes. We're seeing Donald Trump saying, if this is a move towards including LGBTQ people into the civil rights fold, okay, we're seeing then that Donald Trump is, literally, I think he said, that the Justice Department is no longer going to include them under the definition of civil rights. So that's kind of the weird thing of everything I'm talking about is all subject to change. And that's kind of the problems of a new administration. In addition to that, we're seeing an uncertain world. Let's look at Arab Spring, where literally we see revolutions throughout the Islamic world. And this had such high hopes. And instead, it's kind of stalled out. We've seen regime change in Africa, okay, Libya, Egypt. But on the other hand, this is spawning a civil war in Syria that we're going to see, even to today. We're going to see that part of the issue is what's confronting the United States. And again, this is all up in the air now with the new administration. Afghanistan and Iraq in that policy of unilateralism. What do I mean by that? We end this idea of George W. Bush. We're going to go it alone. American cowboy, pretty much. That the world might not like it, but if we feel this is something we need to do to protect our stuff, we're going to do it. We move away from that. We see revolutions again. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Syria. But that's only a part. Now we've got to deal with this. How do we fit into the larger world? We're in a world with drone warfare, where we can send a Predator drone to, go make strikes with Hellfire missiles, which on the one hand sounds like a good idea, until you realize by removing that human element, we're again normalizing collateral damage. We're normalizing, well, hey, we think there's a terrorist here in this group. Oh, we just bombed the wedding party. Oops. We're dealing with the issue of Iran and North Korea and nuclear proliferation. North Korea has just recently deployed a ballistic missile that could hit Alaska. And, they keep doing nuclear tests. There's questions. Iran, are they going to do tests? And again, we've also got, or enriching uranium, And we've got this question. I believe Donald Trump has publicly said he would like to see regime change in Iran. So what are we going to do with that? We've got divided American politics. And what that means in this context is any action that the United States takes abroad will most likely be unpopular with half the country. That literally half the country is going to disapprove of it. And we've got to deal with ISIS because terrorism is not going away. Instead, we've got to deal with the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And those are SOBs that are not dying. And looming above that, okay, but we're dealing with the fact that Russia is resurgent. And, this is from 2014 when, Russia annexes Crimea and they're still there. Russia and Ukraine almost go to war. American planes are intercepting Russian bombers on a nearly daily basis. We've just imposed sanctions on Russia because in 2016 we believe, hacked our election. We know for a fact they did everything they could to try to make sure, Donald Trump won the election. And in response to those sanctions, they have just evicted 755 American diplomats. So, in addition to a fractious United States, where things like police brutality, violence, the Black Lives Matter movement, and I suddenly realized I should have put a slide in here, and I honestly don't know why I didn't. I feel horrible about that. That's something we should have talked about. But, what we're seeing is this internal strife will hamper our ability to interact on the global stage. March 18, 2014, Russia annexes the Crimea. Why that's a problem for us, in addition to just the resurgent Russia, is Crimea was part of Ukraine. And in 1994, Bill Clinton, in exchange for Ukraine giving up its nuclear capability that it inherited from the fall of the Soviet Union, is we agreed to protect their territorial integrity. We are bound to protect the Ukraine if Russia tries anything. We see Russia in 2014 beginning bomber flights as far south as the Caribbean. They're flying bombers to within 50 miles of California. Still international waters, but it's kind of a just remember, we can do this. They're flying bombers off of the British Isles. I mean, here is an intercept by an F-22 of a Tupolev Tu-95 off of California. We're prepping for a new Cold War. And in fact, many people believed that possibly Hillary Clinton would be tough on Russia, so that would mean war. And so they thought, well, vote for Donald Trump, that'll avoid war. But there's no sign that the confrontation is going to ease. In fact, in November, Gorbachev accused the United States of wanting a new Cold War and said we were provoking it. So who knows where this is going to go, especially in light of, again, Russian hackers hacking the Democratic National Convention, releasing Clinton's emails, and now coming to light, literally Russian lawyers and intelligence operatives meeting with Donald Trump Jr., saying, we have this stuff on Clinton, we're willing to give it to you, we're willing to release it. I mean, this is something that's unprecedented. I'll be blunt. I tried to call shots when I gave this lecture a year ago in July. I've got no idea where this is going to end up. Your guess is as good as mine. And it's some troubling times. It really is. Especially with these guys, ISIS. What is it? Obama once famously said, this was Al-Qaeda's JV team, and now they are a legitimate threat executing terrorist attacks all across the world. Literally, Al-Qaeda was the big bad guy when I was, in high school and early college. Now it's ISIS. You don't hear about Al-Qaeda all that much anymore. I mean, these guys are too radical even for them. Now, the issue is we're slow to react. Again, JV team, we thought that this was just going to be an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Who cares? But they proclaim a worldwide Islamic caliphate in June 2014. They made numerous gains in Iraq, again in June 2014. They're helping to keep the war in Syria going. And they've launched numerous terrorist attacks in, Britain, in France, in major cities. I mean, they are a large group that's damn some hard to put down, because every time we kill a few leaders, more just pop up. I mean, that's the problem with terrorism. And so what we're seeing, this is a world that anybody who would dare to be president is going to have a tough time facing. And this is a scary world to live in. I mean, it's not the predictable, Soviets are the bad guys of this, most of this course. It's not this predictable enemy that was as scared of us as we were of them, and that war, especially looking back on it, was not that likely. No, instead, this is an unpredictable conflict. And this is an unstable world. I mean, if we look at it, again, terrorist attacks commonplace, like the Bastille Day attack, where last year, where somebody just drove a truck through a crowd. Okay? There's the issue that Russia is building up its military, and Vladimir Putin kind of seems like he would not mind bringing back the old Russian Empire. ISIS isn't going away. The United Kingdom in Brexit has left the European Union, or rather is in the process of leaving. And so there's the question, what does that mean for world stability? Europe is facing economic issues. Greece is bankrupt. Turkey is bankrupt. And the EU is having to bail them out. What will that lead to in the global economy? There's the issue of the Turkish coup, where literally the military tried to subvert Erdogan, were put down, and now he has seized even more power. And against that, as the world turns to look where it has looked for the entirety of this course, to the United States, now that superpower, what is it we can offer? This is what we offer. Literally, 2016, what the hell happened? Okay? I'm a conservative. I wanted Bernie Sanders to win simply because I thought he was the most sane. Hillary Clinton's got... Donald Trump, dear God, what the hell happened? If you look, these were literally the least popular candidates in American history. Like, nobody wanted these people, but it's who we were saddled with. Trump energized the base, and people, I literally thought, much like with Brexit, it came out after the United Kingdom, results of its referendum, they're leaving. People voted for it because they thought, it'll never pass, so vote for it, what the hell? Well, enough people do that, and what do you have? Well, I think that's a lot here. People voted for Trump, I think, on a lark, and here you go. He also had a really good slogan, Make America Great Again. And much like with the pro-abortion, anti-abortion, if you say you're pro-life, the implication is the other people are pro-death. Okay, well, if Trump is saying we're going to make America great again, the implication is Clinton doesn't. Clinton was bedeviled by the emails, which we now know is because Russia probably hacked the election, tried to skew it to Donald Trump. There may have been outright collusion. We're not sure. But what we know is, you have Trump literally saying that he would have fired his attorney general or not hired him, Jeff Sessions, if he knew Sessions was going to recuse himself from that investigation. We have Bernie Sanders, who literally does not benefit from the fundraising of the Democratic National Convention. You have debates where the debate questions are passed to Hillary Clinton, but not to Sanders, and they try to rig it where Clinton can win. I mean, literally, this was a cluster from the very beginning, and frankly, the only thing good that I can say about this election is, oh dear God, Kate McKinnon and Alec Baldwin. Okay, beyond that, and Larry David. Beyond that, this election was, historians of the future are going to have a field day with what we've done. So where are we now? And again, I wrote this lecture a couple of years ago. I had not updated with Black Lives Matter. I thought I did. I do apologize for that. But let's talk about that right now. We're dealing with racial issues in the United States. We're dealing with police brutality, very commonplace. We're dealing with the case of, Oklahoma, Betty Shelby, who Tulsa PD last year, I believe, or was it early this year, shot and killed a black guy. Yes, he was on PCP, but he was unarmed. But she feared for her life, despite the fact in the video there are other officers there, and she is acquitted. Other cases of police brutality, especially towards African Americans, and the people are being acquitted. And there's natural, then, distrust. And so we're seeing the rise of this movement, Black Lives Matter, trying to say that, look, Black Lives Matter. We are people too. And some people have tried to say, well, all lives matter. And the problem with all lives matter is some people genuinely want to include Black Lives Matter and say, yeah, let's bring you in. You're just like us. Others want to say it to diminish it. Others want to say, well, blue lives matter, and again, diminish it. And again, we've seen riots. We've seen racial turmoil. And watch some of these protests, some of the peaceful ones, to get a sense of what people truly think. When BLM first happened, there was actually a protest march here on OSU Stillwater. And apparently somebody drove by the protesters, honked, and as they're saying, Black Lives Matter, he just stuck his head out the window. No, they don't. That racism is still, unfortunately, alive and well. That, yes, we've had an African-American president. Yes, we've made amazing strides since the beginning of this course. Amazing strides since, Slap Me Mama with a Boogie Beat. There you go. I had to remember the name of the cartoon. But that racism is still entrenched, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. We've got a very divisive political partisanship. I mean, literally, I don't know how your Facebook feeds are going, but I avoid posting anything political because if I say anything, pro-Republican, half my friends will leave. If I say anything pro-Democrat, the other half will leave. We've gotten to this point where we cannot engage in a useful dialogue. And part of that is because before Facebook, we actually had to be respectful. We didn't know what the other guy's political views were. We couldn't just share a meme. But now we can do anything. We can share this meme. And go outlandish. And now we have a voice. We feel important. It has helped everyone's own ingrown narcissism to just be willing to share whatever you happen to be thinking, to think your view is important. And, I don't care what people share. It's your Facebook. But I've had to unfollow family members because it's just like, good God, how can you think that? We see chaos and infighting in the White House. I mean, literally, Donald Trump in 6 months, despite going to Twitter and boasting, he has done more than anybody else in 6 months. No, BS. Go look at Franklin Roosevelt, 100 days, thank you. We see just such a high turnover. Reince Priebus, gone. Sean Spicer, gone. The Mooch, gone. Scaramucci. Like, literally, it's just this high turnover. It is completely dysfunctional. James Comey, gone. Just so many people. We see these factions competing for power, and the result is nothing is getting done. We've left the Paris Accords. I want to say Paris Peace Accords, but that's something different. And so now, we've done all this stuff trying to recognize that climate change is real and a danger. And now we're just like, yeah, no, we're done. And I'll tell you what my thoughts on climate change are. I will admit, I wonder how much is man-made versus the fact snowball Earth. How much does Earth do this normally? But that being said, whether it's true or not, whether we're true or not, what's the problem with removing emissions? What's the problem for making it a little better? Go look at pictures of Manhattan in the 70s versus today. Pollution's a real thing. I mean, this is stuff we need to combat. And, again, I don't see the harm in, well, what if it's real? Maybe, again, I was too much a Boy Scout. Leave the campground a little bit better than you found it. Well, that's kind of what we're doing with planet Earth. We're seeing a possible change in direction. Since 1945, the superpower, we've been the world's cop. Team America World Police is grounded in reality. But with Donald Trump, we're seeing this emergence of an America First idea of let's focus on us first, to hell with the rest of the world. There's always this continued possibility of conflict with Russia. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. And we have a president who says he wants to do all this stuff, but literally his popularity rating is the worst of American presidents in the past 70 years. He briefly, if we mark points in presidency, Gerald Ford at this point was about 1 point lower because people were pissed off that he had pardoned Nixon. But aside from just that momentary dip in Ford's popularity, Trump is the least popular. That translates into no political capital. So we could see an administration that's going to change everything, or that could change nothing. We just simply don't know. But what I can say is most of this course represented some element of stability. What do I mean by that? The Cold War, as scary as it was, you knew what you were facing. You knew who the bad guy was. That was the central thing to rally around. We don't have that anymore. And now we're seeing, this new result of the 70s, me generation coming out. And who knows where it could lead. I personally think that this country has endured and will endure. I think it's stronger than any one man or political party. But at the same time, it's hard to, you can't ignore the fact that, LGBTQ people are scared, and rightfully they should be. That people who need health insurance are scared, and rightfully should be. Minorities are scared, and rightfully they should be. And so now it's as important as it's always been, if not more so, that you, the American voter, the American citizen, the person who actually makes this stuff happen, by putting both people in the White House, but also voting for the people in Congress, voting for the people in your state legislatures. It's time for you to get politically active. If you like what's going on, keep it going. But if you don't, step up, make your voice heard, and not on a Facebook meme, not on just sharing something, not on a status, but actually get energized in the political sphere. You can make a difference, okay? If enough people who think like you go out and vote, you can change policy. You can change at the midterm elections next year in Congress. You can either ensure the Republicans can repeal Obamacare, or you can get Democrats in there that ensure that no, they can't, and that, fine, Obamacare, law of the land, let's move on. You can ensure who's going to get elected, but it all comes down to you, because at the end of the day, okay, this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it will stray. Governments are fallible. Not just American, but world history tells us that. Okay, governments are fallible, they're corrupt, but I believe that this country is strong enough that we can stop the government when it gets out of line. We can, in fact, take it back. Not to the 50s, not to the 1700s, but take it back to the people. Okay, people have been jaded for years. Okay, one of my favorite Three Stooges shorts is from the 1952 election cycle, where Schimpf says this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and against the people. You know, where they make things such as, those are campaign slogans. You can't believe that. That cynicism's been here forever. Okay? But the country has withstood. Things have gotten better. And that is the power, I think, of enough people like you getting educated, going to college, listening to lectures like this, and deciding to make a difference. And on that note, I will get off my soapbox. I really, really hope you've enjoyed the course. It's been a blast for me to teach. Remember, please fill out your surveys. I'd love to know, what I did, what I could improve on. I'd especially love to know if you like the course. It's getting those, responses where I know you've enjoyed it. That's what makes the job worth doing. I'd love to hear from you. Please stay in touch. I'd love to see you guys in future history courses. And, whatever I can do for you, please let me know. I've posted the final exam stuff. Again, it's the same format. It's going to be an essay. Again, do 2 essays like you've been doing. Do the ID quiz. That's going to be open till Sunday. I've also posted an extra credit quiz that is cumulative. It's multiple choice, also open till Sunday. You don't have to do that, but it's worth some bonus points. So if you were late turning in a book review, or you forgot to do something, or you weren't happy with an exam score, that's a good way to get points up. So if there's anything I can do, if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a great rest of the summer. Enjoy your 2 weeks off unless you have an intersession course. And have a great fall semester, and I hope to see you guys all once again. Take care, have a good one, and this time, I won't see you in the next video. Take it easy, have a good one, and have a great fall. Bye-bye, guys.